All right, it's 4 o'clock, so let's get started. Welcome to an official event of the 9th Annual MSU Science Festival. My name is Hazel Anderson, and I'm a member of the Science Festival team. And with me today is Brian from Bees in the D's to talk about urban honeybees and to give us a tour of the hive. So, hi, Brian.
Thank you, Hazel. Hi, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And if you're ready to go, Hazel, I will get started. So I wish that I could go live with you at the Hive, but it's a little early in the bee season. So we are going to be watching a video that we recorded this last summer of our Hive Tour at the Outdoor Adventure Center downtown Detroit. We have 4 hives right on the DeQuinder Cut. Real quick, I'm Brian, as you heard, from Bees in the D. We're a nonprofit located here in Detroit. And basically our mission is education. I'm a teacher as well, teach 5th grade and college at Oakland University, and conservation of our pollinators. And I want to give a big special welcome to any of our Girl Scouts that might be joining us today, because this presentation does count for our Girl Scouts Beekeeper patch. This is part of the program that you would do, the Discover and then the Connect. That's both in this presentation. And then the Take Action, that's all on you and your leaders. So I wanted to welcome any Girl Scouts that might be with us. And I hope that this helps you get your patch. And in the future, we'll be able to suit you up and take you right into the hives. But COVID had other plans. And I just want to remind everybody, this is an official event of the Michigan State University Science Festival. And please, 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 if you have any questions, you can put it right down in the Q&A, which is part of the Zoom. And then I will answer those questions at the end. I was telling Hazel, though, that probably most of them will get answered right in the video. So if you're kind of patient and keep watching, your question might get answered, but don't hesitate to put it in there, because I don't want you to forget it. But if it gets answered, that's great. But if not, I will take a little time at the end to answer questions as well. So are you ready? Are you ready to head out into the hives? So let's get rolling, and hopefully everybody can hear and see everything okay. Rolling right into the hives. And I'm going to mute myself during this so that I don't accidentally disturb all of you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today to learn a little bit more about honeybees, being a beekeeper, and of course, we're going to take a hive tour. My name is Brian Peterson. I am the co-founder of Bees in the D, and Bees in the D is a nonprofit based in Detroit, Michigan, and our mission is the conservation and education of honeybees. So we are actually in Detroit right now. We are at the Outdoor Adventure Center, right on the riverfront and on the DeQuinder Cut. We have 4 hives here at the Outdoor Adventure Center, and one of those hives is extremely special. It actually, together with DTE and the Outdoor Adventure Center, has a solar panel which gives power to a camera that is both on the exterior of the hive, where the bees are going in and out, and a camera on the interior of the hive, so you can actually see the bees in their hive without opening up the hive, and that's all projected into the Outdoor Adventure Center at the honeybee display that they've put in there. So we're excited for you to join us. Let's go into our little apiary here. So now that we're inside our apiary here, I want to talk about what it is to be a beekeeper and some of the tools that we use, and then we're going to talk about the parts of the hive. I think it'll be a little easier without my gloves to talk about a few of these things. So a beekeeper's main job is just to make sure that the bees are healthy. We don't have to go in the hive very often to make sure they're healthy. We're just looking to make sure there's no disease, there are parasites, and we're making sure that we have a viable queen and that there's fresh eggs, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So when beekeepers go into a hive, the bees, this is their home, and we need to be respectful of that. So we need to be very slow, we need to be calm, and the bees, a few may kind of come up by your face because, like I said, this is their home. They want to keep it safe, especially the queen. And so that's why we wear a bee suit. And a bee suit traditionally is a little bit baggy, and there is a veil to protect your face. Also, beekeepers usually wear gloves, which I'll put back on when we go in the hive, just to protect your hands. Many beekeepers actually wear a full suit. This is just a jacket. Let me talk about a few of the tools that we use. So whenever we're working with bees, you usually want to use a smoker, and you can see it's already smoking. Smoke actually calms the bees. So what we'll do, and you'll see in a little bit, I'll just do a little puff out front. Why does it calm the bees? A couple reasons. The first reason is bees actually communicate with scent. They give off what's known as a pheromone. And when they feel like their home is in danger, they will give off that pheromone as an alarm. And other bees will sense that alarm or that smell, and they will come out to help defend the hive. The smoke helps mask that pheromone. Also, the bees may misunderstand that their hive might be on fire. And just like if your house was on fire, you want to take your valuables. You want to get out as soon as possible. You want to get anything that's really valuable, like your pets, or maybe there's some money right there. Well, the bees, their most valuable asset is their honey. And so they're going to get a gut full of honey, which makes them a little bit more lethargic and kind of slow. And so that helps calm the bees. So that is known as a smoker. Probably the most important tool for a beekeeper is what's known as a hive tool. A hive tool is just like a little mini crowbar. And I'm going to use this to crack open the boxes. You're going to hear that noise. It's propolis. That is a substance that bees make to kind of seal everything up. It's like bee glue. And so this tool is extremely important. I like to also use what's known as a frame grip. And a frame grip is exactly like the name implies. It grips the frame so that I can pull it out carefully and slowly so that I don't harm the bees. And then, of course, if we're doing a honey harvest, which is later, there's also a bee brush that can be used, but we won't need that on today's tour. So now that we learned a little bit about what the beekeeper wears and the tools that they use, let's talk about the hive itself. So I'm going to kind of move off to the side here to show you. Down here at the bottom is what's known as the bottom board. It's made out of wood, so it's a board, and it's at the bottom. That's where the bees can go in and out. I can actually change their door. And if you look at this, this can be in their front door. I can make their door smaller. I can make it kind of medium. And then now that it's getting warmer, I can remove it completely so the bees have plenty of room to go in and out when there's lots of traffic. The next box up is known as a deep. This is what is also known as the queen's quarters. This is where the queen lives, in this deep and in this deep. She is not allowed to go upstairs, and I'm going to explain how we keep her from going up there in just a second. So these deeps have frames in them, and those frames are where the bees draw out the wax to make the honeycomb, or the cells where the queen can lay her eggs, and where the bees can store some nectar and pollen. Let's move up. It's hard to see right now, but there is a thin metal thing right here between the smaller boxes and the deeps. That is known as a queen excluder. And just like the name implies, it excludes the queen from going up into the smaller boxes. I'll explain why in just a second. The queen excluder, when we open up the hive, you'll see it's got little narrow slats that the worker bees can fit through, but the queen has a little bit larger body and she can't fit through that. Above the queen excluder is a medium or a honey super. That's where the worker bees bring up the nectar to make it into honey. And we'll talk about that when we go on our tour. And then inside is an inner cover, just like the name implies, a cover that's on the inside. And then this right here is the outer cover. And of course that keeps the elements like rain and all the different weather problems to keep the hive nice and dry. So that's the outer cover. So those are the basic parts of a beehive. Okay, so now that we know the parts of the hive, let's talk about the bees that are inside the hive. But first, I want to make sure that you understand the difference between two very common insects that are in Michigan, the honeybee and the yellow jacket. To help illustrate that, I have this picture, and I call it the case of the misidentification. And if you look carefully, you can see on one side, we have more of a golden color insect, and on the other side, it's more of a yellow and black insect. The golden colored one is a honeybee, and the yellow and black one is a yellow jacket. The yellow jackets are the ones that if you're having a picnic or you're at the orchard getting some cider, they're in your face and kind of bothering you. Honeybees really don't want much to do with you because they're too busy going out to the fields and finding flowers. And so that is the main difference between a honeybee and a yellow jacket. One other little difference is, like most bees and wasps, they can sting. The honeybee has a stinger with a barb on the end of it. It's like a little hook. And when they sting you, it gets stuck in your skin. And when they go to fly away, it unfortunately rips the bee. And then that bee unfortunately dies. Unlike the wasp that doesn't have that barb on the end, and it can sting you again and again, and it doesn't harm the wasp. So that's the main difference between a honeybee and a yellow jacket. So now that we know the different parts of the hive, let's talk about the colony itself and the three castes of bees that are in the colony. And everybody loves to talk about the queen bee. Well, the queen isn't exactly a queen like you think of it, in charge of everything. She actually is in charge of something, and that is laying eggs. And it's very important that she lays a lot of eggs. Do you know how many? A queen bee can lay 2,500 eggs a day. Now that's a lot of eggs, but it's extremely important because she wants to build up the colony so it's really strong and has a lot of population. The second caste of bees is about 95% of the population, and that is the worker bees. And just like their name implies, they do all the work. And what's cool about this is their jobs progress as they get older. So they may start as a cleaner bee, and then maybe they're going to be a wax builder, and then maybe they're going to guard the front of the hive, and eventually they get to become the job that all bees love, and that's to go out and forage and find nectar and pollen. Here's the thing about worker bees that's quite interesting. They're all girls, meaning only the girls do work. The boys don't do any work. And here's the other thing. Only the worker bees or the girl bees have a stinger. The boy bees do not. The last caste of bees I want to talk about is the boy bees. Now that we just learned about the girl bees being the workers, the boy bees are known as drones. And the drones, like I said, don't do any work. Their only task is to go out in a late afternoon towards the evening, and their goal is to go out and find a queen from another hive to mate with. The drones actually last only for the season because at the end of the season, come fall, all the worker bees push the drones out of the hive because they don't want to have to feed them all winter long. So now I want to talk about the body parts of a bee, but I think it will be a little easier to use our worker bee to show this. All bees have three body segments, and if you look carefully here, you can see the head, the thorax, which is in the middle, and the abdomen, which is the last part. Now, I'm going to teach you a fun little way to learn the different parts of a bee. So it's a 6 count. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, we have 1 insect. Let's go to number 2. All bees have 2 antennae. Let's go to number 3. They have 3 body segments, which we just learned about. Number 4, they have 4 wings. Number 5 may surprise you. Bees have 5 eyes. And then number 6,
Bees, like all insects, have 6 legs. So honeybees, like all insects, go through a very important process known as the metamorphosis, and that is the life cycle of a honeybee. Now, with a honeybee, it's much like our friends, the butterfly. That's also an insect, where the butterfly lays an egg, and that egg hatches, it becomes a caterpillar. The caterpillar eventually spins a cocoon or a chrysalis, and then becomes an adult butterfly. Let's take a look at what the bees do, which is very similar. The queen bee is gonna lay an egg in a cell. That egg is going to hatch, and it becomes a larva. The nurse bees are gonna feed the larva so it grows, and eventually it gets so big, they seal that larva in, and it goes through the pupa stage, and eventually the pupa becomes an adult and emerges out of the cell, and now we have a new bee. So a lot of people ask me, how do you get the bees in the hive? There's a few different ways. You could order a nuke box, which is a box that has frames already in it, or you can get a package that looks like this. This doesn't have the bees in it anymore, but the package has a can in it that is full of sugar water that the bees can drink while they're in transit. In the US mail or the UPS, they can send it right through the mail, and it has a really cool little cage in it, known as a queen cage. Inside of this cage will be the queen bee, and eventually they get her out by chewing out a little sugar cork, releasing the queen into the hive so that she can start laying her eggs. So this is known as a bee package. Now comes the part I know you've all been waiting for. Shall we go into the hive and meet the bees? Let's do it. All right, so I'm gonna review some of the parts as we go through the hive, and I wanna remind you to look carefully for the 3 castes of bees we talked about: the queen, the workers, and the drone bees. So I'm gonna get my gloves on for protection, and we're gonna head on in. All right, I've got my hive tool ready. I've got my frame grip ready. Let's go in. So this outer part, like I said, to keep the weather out, is the outer cover. I'm just gonna take that right off and set it down. This part you couldn't see when we talked about it. This is the inner cover. And the inner cover has a couple features. It's got a hole in the middle and a little slat right here. The purpose of this is because heat rises, it's gonna come up through this hole and vent out through the front, because the bees out front of the hive fan their wings, circulating the air. Did you know bees inspired humans to create something that you may have in your home, known as air conditioning? Pretty cool. Now, before I take this smaller box known as the medium off, I'm gonna get my smoker, because I just wanna give a couple puffs out front at the front door to let the bees know I'm coming in. And I usually give a few puffs up here as well. And this is where I need my hive tool. This box is pretty stuck on this hive, so I need to get underneath there and crack it open. And there we go, I got it cracked. And so I'm gonna remove the medium, because there's not many bees up there yet, but eventually they're gonna travel up there to put the nectar to make the honey that we all love. So this is the part you couldn't see very well. This is known as the Queen Excluder. Notice we've got a lot of worker bees that are kind of going through these little slats I talked about. That's the part that the queen can't fit up through to go up into the upper box, because we don't want her to lay eggs up in the honey. So that is known as the Queen Excluder. I'm just gonna set that aside as well. I want you to notice the bees are very calm. Honeybees actually are very docile or very calm creatures. Notice I'm gonna start slowing down so that I don't make them nervous, and they pretty much will not mind that I'm going in their home. But to help out, I am gonna give them a couple puffs of smoke. Notice how they kind of scramble. The reason I like to do that is because the smoke kind of drives them down, and if it drives them down, they have less of a chance of me accidentally maybe hurting them. So I'm gonna give them a little smoke, and then I use my hive tool again to kind of break away a frame, and this is where the frame grip comes in. I put it down in, and I simply just lift slowly straight up like so. And you can see lots of girls on this side. Not as many as the other side, which I'll show you in a second, but I want to talk about what you're seeing here. All of this is actually honey. Nectar was put into all these cells, and the bees will beat their wings and evaporate the water out of the nectar until it's about 17% water, and then it is known as honey. Do you want to see the honey kind of drip out a little bit? If I take my Hive tool and put a little gash, do you see how the honey is dripping? And watch how the bees will start to come up and start to repair the wax and get that honey to make sure it's safely put into the cell. See how they're starting to come on up and make sure that that honey is going to be safe? I also want to show you, we have 2 casts of bees here. This one right here is a little bit bigger. Do you see it? Bigger eyes, bigger body. That is a boy bee known as a drone. And all the ones around it are its sisters, and those are worker bees. The drone is going to come up and get a little drink of honey as well, I think. I'm going to flip the frame so you can see the other side, which has even more bees. Look at that. And I want to show you what you're seeing on this side as well. If you look, here's that honey we talked about. See how it's capped up? And they put it kind of along the top and down the sides. That helps keep the middle warm, especially for when the queen lays the eggs. But I want you to notice down here, there's kind of like yellow and orange. Look at this one right here, red, all different colors inside of those cells. That is pollen. The bees bring back pollen from plants, and that is also food for them. So let's talk about that. The honey is their sugars, or their food for them, like their carbohydrates. The pollen is their protein, and that helps keep them nice and healthy as well. Just like you need to diversify your diet, they do the same thing. And notice the girls and a few gentlemen, but the girls are all working. The boy bees are just kind of walking around, getting a little bit to eat here and there, and all that wonderful stuff. So I'm looking carefully for the queen. I don't see her on this cell. I see lots of worker bees, and I see a few drones mixed in here and there. Shall we go on to another cell or another frame? Sorry, these aren't cells. These are cells. This is known as a frame. I'm gonna set this frame down below here, and they're just gonna keep working while I examine the rest. Let's give them a little reminder that we're not here to hurt them. Little puff of smoke. And I'm gonna crack the next frame. Hopefully we'll find some brood, which is about the life cycle of the bees. All right, so let's take a look at this frame. Notice you don't see the honey, and there is inside of these cells tiny little eggs. They're gonna be very difficult to see on the camera, but in the middle especially, the queen was in there laying eggs. All of these bees are taking care of those eggs and larvae. And so those are nurse bees. They're the ones that take care of the young as they're developing and going through their stages of metamorphosis. Let's check the other side. The other side looks very similar. I'm not seeing the queen yet. Look at all the pollen over here. Isn't that beautiful? The orange and the yellows, and a little bit of honey up in the corners. I'm gonna put this frame back in, and we're gonna move on to another frame. All right, using this Hive tool, I'm gonna crack the frame, and we're gonna get this one out. Okay, now we've got something new that I'm excited to show you. Of course, we've got a lot of nurse bees and worker bees. We've got a few drones, see this larger one mixed in? But look at all this brownish colored stuff in the middle. That is what is known as capped brood. Those are the pupa state of the bees. Inside of there is a pupa, and a new bee, probably within a couple days, an adult bee is gonna emerge out. They'll chew their way through that wax. But I don't know if you can see, look right here on the edge. Do you see that white in there? It kind of looks like white goo. That's the larva. That's called uncapped brood, meaning that they haven't reached the pupa stage yet, and they're still larvae. And every once in a while, you'll see a worker bee put their head down in there. There's one right there doing it to make sure that the larvae have plenty of food. So I'm looking to see if I see any other activities of the bees to share with you. And that may include something that's very fun known as the Waggle Dance. So we're gonna keep looking and maybe I'll see the Waggle Dance. Let me tell you a little bit about the Waggle Dance. The Waggle Dance is how bees, along with the scent of smell that we've talked about, the pheromones, they communicate. When a bee goes out into the field and finds a really juicy flower or tree with lots of flowers, it's gonna come back to the hive and it's gonna communicate to all its sisters that are foragers where to find that tree. How does she do it? By shaking her booty. She shakes her little behind to communicate. And what direction she moves is the direction towards the sun. And how many times she shakes her little booty is how far to go. And they actually are giving off a smell of that flower as well, or that pollen. So when the bee goes out, it knows which direction to fly, it knows how far to fly, and it's trying to find that same scent that that bee gave them. That's known as the Waggle Dance. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, I want to show you something else I noticed about this frame, and that's what beekeepers do. They're looking for all kinds of things. They're looking for disease, they're looking for pests, and they're looking for queen cells. And this right here are 2 practice queen cells. So what is a queen cell? If the queen starts to not be able to lay very well, or she gets damaged or hurt in the hive, the bees will make a brand new queen. And the queen will put an egg in there, and then they'll develop it out to make a new queen. And sometimes they'll make a new queen so that the hive can split and half of the hive can go find a new home, and the other half stays here because maybe they're running out of room. And so that's what's known as a swarm. When you see a big ball of bees in a tree or on a wall, it's a swarm of bees where the old queen took about 50 to 60% of the population, and they're looking for a new home. And a new queen is going to emerge and now take over this hive with laying eggs. Let's keep going and see if we can find anything else in here. All right. I'm going to give them a little reminder that I'm not here to harm them. A little bit of smoke. And I'm going to grab my Hive Tool, crack away this frame, and let's take a look and see what this one looks like. All right, so we've got a lot more brood here, and I want to show you something that happens occasionally when you go into a hive. When you go into a hive, occasionally you accidentally break some of the cells, and that's what happened here. But it's kind of cool because now you can see that larva inside of the cell right there, and it's about to become a pupa. Unfortunately, that one's not going to develop because it got broke, but that's where the undertaker bees come in. They're going to take that larva out, fly out the front, and drop it so that it's not left in the hive. Other than that, I see lots of brood here. Let's look at the other side. More brood, and some of the brood you can actually see inside of the cells, and some of the brood is a little bit larger. I'm gonna wait for another frame to show you that, but I do wanna show you, we've got a little boys club going on here. If you look carefully, there's a drone, there's a drone, there's a drone. Lots of drones are hanging out here, and notice how they have a little bit bigger body than their sisters known as the worker bees. So let's keep moving along. I see some pollen up here on the top as well. In a little bit, we'll talk about pollination and why that pollen is not just important for bees to eat, but why it's important for us so that we can eat. Let's take out another frame first. All right, this one's got all kinds of stuff going on. You can see a little bit of extra comb down here, quite a few drones. I'm carefully looking for the queen, hoping that we'll find her. I don't see her on that side or this side. And it looks like this middle area here at one point was brood, but they've all emerged, and that's perfect for the queen. Once they emerge out as a new bee, the nurse bees then, the cleaner bees clean out the cell, and then the queen comes along and lays another egg, and they keep reusing the cells again and again. Let's keep going. All right, so let me get my hive tool. I'm gonna kind of crack this frame out a little bit. Oops, almost dropped my smoker, but I'm gonna give them a couple puffs just to drive them down again. And let's take a look at this one. Oh, what a beautiful frame. There's that practice cell we talked about, the queen cell. There's the brood, there's pollen and honey. This has got a little bit of everything. And this side, oh, this is what I was hoping to show you. I want you to look, and I'm gonna take the smoker to kind of clear the bees a little bit. See how it kind of makes them run so that I can show you? This brood right here, notice how it's kind of bigger and bubblier. There's even one or two right in the middle there. Those are new drone bees that are in their cycle. And oh my gosh, look right there. You can see one of the drone bees. Let me move this little girl. Starting to emerge right there. Do you see it right there? That is a new drone bee that is coming out, and I think we even have some that are about ready to come out right here. So how exciting to see a new bee. They're not really being born, it's just the end of their metamorphosis. They're becoming an adult. Pretty cool stuff. I don't know if you can see up here, but there are some small larvae up in there. It kind of looks white and squiggly, and that is the larva state. And the nurse bees are going to be feeding that larva, and eventually they're going to develop, and they'll put that wax over them to become capped brood. Pretty cool stuff. All right, I'm not seeing the queen yet, but keep in mind she could be down in one of the lower boxes. All right, shall we continue? I'll take out this frame, and let's talk about pollination when I take out this frame, because this frame is a lot heavier and has a ton of pollen and nectar. See how it glistens? And then the nectar becomes honey once they evaporate most of the water. So why is pollination so important? Well, a lot of plants need different animals like honeybees to pollinate the plant. It's called cross-pollination. They go from one flower to another flower, and they carry the pollen with them on the backs of their legs, and they sometimes drop a little of that pollen on the next flower. That allows that flower to go to seed or to go to fruit. And that's where we come in, because that fruit develops or that seed develops like nuts, and then we get to enjoy it. Scientists say at least 1/3 of all the food that we eat somehow was directly pollinated by a honeybee or other bees and pollinators. So pretty cool process of how the bees help us out with a lot of our food. But I think it's also worth mentioning now that the bees also provide us with food. Honey. I know you probably like honey. This honey right here is the nectar that they've evaporated the water, and then they cap it to keep it nice and safe. Kind of like when you put your leftovers in a Tupperware container. They kind of lit it up with the wax. That honey is so sweet and delicious, and it is considered a superfood, meaning it has lots of properties in it that is good for our bodies. And so the bees are providing us with not only food, but they're providing us with the wax, which we can make candles, we can make lip balms. They're also providing us with propolis, which is the thing I talked about, which seals the hives. You can see a little bit of that stickiness along the edges of the hive here. And humans use that. Did you know the Native Americans used to use it to help seal their canoes and their boats? Also, we use the pollen. The pollen is actually really good for us. Maybe your parents put it in a smoothie in the morning to help get that nutrients from that pollen. So bees provide us with a lot of wonderful products. One other product, when you look in the cells, not on this one here, but when there's larvae, they put in this gooey white substance known as royal jelly. And royal jelly helps them develop, especially the queen. And that royal jelly is used by humans as well. It really helps with our skin. And a lot of your toothpaste has royal jelly in it. So very fascinating that this insect provides so many products for us humans. I think that's so cool. All right, we're gonna go to one last frame here. And this one, because it's on the outside of the hive, most likely is almost all honey, like that first frame that we looked at. Here it comes. Ooh, is it heavy? Look at all that honey. Now there's a few areas that don't have honey yet, but all this stuff that's capped is honey. It is technically honey, and you saw me kind of rip it open. Look at this side. They don't even need to work on this side because now the honey is all stored away inside of the cells and capped up. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we're gonna put this frame back in. Okay, we didn't see the queen up on this layer, so let's take down this box and go to the bottom layer and see if we can find the queen. But I do wanna warn you, there's only one queen, and there are about 60,000 bees inside of this hive. So it can be a little difficult to find a queen with so many other bees. So I'm gonna go ahead and crack this box, and I'm gonna warn you, these are very heavy because of that honey. So this box weighs upwards of 80 to 100 pounds because it's so full of honey. So you gotta have a real strong back to do this. All right, so I'm gonna get in there with my hive tool and crack it. Did you hear that cracking noise? And now I'm just gonna lift it and I'm gonna set it off to the side. The bees will just keep working with it just like that. I like to put it sideways like this because if I put it the other way, the weight of the frames will kind of push. Now we're down to another layer of bees, so I wanna let these bees know that I'm not here to hurt them either. Notice how they kind of scramble. And you'll notice that I may have a scout bee or two that's out in front, just checking out. They just wanna make sure that their hive is safe. You hear that cracking? That's all the propolis that is sealing up these frames. And look at this. So there was a piece of wood that got stuck in the hive. You can almost can't even see that it's wood, but that's all propolis. They coat it so that that wood doesn't rot in there. It was too big for them to carry it out. So I'll help them out and I'll just put it aside because that's not part of their home. All right, let's take the first frame, which is always the hardest frame because they're in there nice and tight. They need to have good bee space. And you'll notice we've got pollen, we've got honey. We've been seeing that. Oh, wow, look at all that pollen. A ton of pollen. This is all pollen from all the different flowers that are throughout Detroit. I'm gonna set that frame off to the side. I'm gonna give them a little reminder just to keep them a little bit calm. I don't want them scared, especially if we're getting to their queen. They may be nervous. They want to protect more pollen. So down here you can see it's not as populated. I'm not even seeing any brood yet. So we'll just keep looking. The middle ones usually have more brood because it's warmer in the middle. And so the queen tends to stay to the middle. All right, let's take a look and see if we see her running around this pollen and a little bit of shiny nectar. I see a bunch of drones. So you're starting to see the difference between the big bees and the little bit smaller worker bees. All right, I don't see her there. I want to take my time, not to make them too nervous. All right, quite a few more workers. So the queen really has not been down in this bottom box laying eggs yet. So it's very possible she is upstairs in that upper box and I just missed her. So I'm just gonna kind of go a little bit faster through these frames looking for the queen, but I don't know, there's not many bees down here. And what I may do, and this is something that beekeepers do, is I may take this box and move it to the top and put this box at the bottom because the queen tends to like to go up to the top to lay, and this will give her plenty of room to lay more eggs and build the colony even larger. But it is possible she's down here, or she's still in that box and I just missed her, which can happen when you're dealing with so many bees. That can happen. So I'm just going to do a quick check and then probably rotate the boxes. See how there's not many bees down here? By rotating it, they'll move upstairs and start filling it with that nectar and filling it with that pollen, and the queen will start laying a lot of eggs. I'm not seeing her down here. We got one more frame to check, and then I'm gonna put that one frame back in, and I am actually gonna rotate the boxes. Ooh, now this is something that you should see, because this is something that beekeepers are looking for. I want you to notice how this wax looks kind of weird. See how it's not flat on the frame like all the other wax? Beekeepers call this Wacky Comb because it's kind of wacky. I am gonna clean that up because I don't see any bees around here, but I don't wanna hurt any bees, so watch what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna give it a little jerk, and almost all the bees are now off of it, and I'm gonna clean up their house a little bit. I'm gonna take my Hive Tool, and I am gonna scrape all that wax off so that they can rebuild it the right way. And so now you actually get to see this foundation, which is called plasticell, that some beekeepers use. They will rebuild this so it's flat. And here's the awesome news about that. This wax, which looks really dark and dirty, we can actually refine it. We have a thing called a solar wax melter, where we put it in, and all day long the sun gets super hot and it melts the wax and separates it from all the dirtiness. And then you have to refine it further, and you can make lip balms, you can make candles, you can make those really cool wraps that you have for food that you can reuse, which is better for the environment. And so this wax will not go to waste. I have a little bucket that I store it in, so I'm gonna put it up here for safekeeping right now, and then I'm gonna add it to my bucket of wax when I'm all done with this inspection. So I'm gonna put this box back together, and then we'll do one more scan through that first box to see if we can see the queen. All right, so I already switched the boxes around. So this was the box that was the second story, but I'm making it the first story. And then this box is gonna go on and become the second story. Let's go through the frames, put the hive back together, and while we do that, we'll look for the queen. So let's start all the way on the end here, which remember, that's gonna be mainly honey, and most of it's capped, so there's not gonna be many bees in that frame. So I'm just gonna set it right back in, and we're gonna slowly restack this hive the way that it was with the frames. And here comes this one, which will have quite a few bees. And I'm just gonna look real carefully while you get to enjoy seeing the bees to see if we see the queen. I am not seeing her on this side, and chances are she would not be on this frame because it's mainly honey and nectar. She wants to be on a frame where there's empty cells that she can lay her eggs. And I don't see her on this one. This one's a little easier to look because there's not as many bees. So let's put that frame right back in. And notice I'm making sure the frames are nice and tight, because this little space right here is known as bee space. And I want to make sure that that's the space that they have, so that we don't have more of that crazy wacky comb that we saw. All right, this is a beautiful frame. And this could be a frame that the queen is on. Maybe you can look along with me to see if you see a larger abdomen on a bee. I'm not seeing it. I do see these drone comb right here, remember? Those were the drones. One had just emerged right here. You can see the little cap that was on there. And let's check the other side. I love how calm they are. Look at, there's that practice queen cell. I'm seeing lots of workers, a few drones. Remember, drones only make up about 5% of the hive. Let's go ahead and put that frame right back in. Notice I'm going slow. I want to make sure that I don't hurt the bees. All right, this one's loaded. And it's got a lot of drone cells. And this could be a good candidate for the queen as well. But I'm not seeing her yet. No sign of her on this side. Let's check the other side. Nice and calm on this side. They're all doing their work, their jobs that they need to do. I'm also looking to see if I see a waggle dance. You know what else I'm looking for? Unfortunately, a lot of bees have many different things that can hurt them, like disease and a parasite known as the Varroa Mite. And the Varroa Mite is parasitic. It lives right on the bee, and you actually can see them. Oh, I have to point out this tiny little girl right here. See how small she is? That is probably a bee that emerged today. See how she's a little bit fuzzier and smaller? She's got a little growing to do before she can go out in the field and forage. She's got to strengthen up those wing muscles before she can go out and do that. All right, let's put this frame back. We've got 4 or 5 more frames to check to see if we can find that queen. Where is she hiding? And I will be honest with you, the queen is not the biggest fan of light, but I think I see her. Are you ready? She is right here. That is the queen right there. Do you see her? She's a darker queen. She's got dark bands, but that's mama right there. Notice her abdomen is a little bit longer. And if you watch for a little bit, a lot of times bees will go up and look like they're almost kissing her. They are offering her food because she doesn't have to feed herself. They feed her. But that's the beautiful queen right there. And she's right there. And see, some of the tenants are circled around her, cleaning her up, making sure that she has everything that she needs. What a beautiful queen. So you got to see royalty. How cool is that? And we know we have a healthy queen. So what we're gonna do is, now that we've seen the queen, we've seen many workers, quite a few drones, we're gonna go ahead and neatly put the hive back together so they can go right back to what they were doing, okay? So let's carefully put her in, and I'm gonna turn it this way so that I know she's on that side, and I can move it over real slow and careful because I don't wanna hurt the queen. And now, instead of lifting all the frames, let's just go ahead and move them over and make sure that we get those last 2 frames that are out of the hive in at the end because they're mainly honey. And you see the bees are getting a little bit more like, what's going on? And that time, a lot of times for beekeepers, lets you know it's time. It's time to close up the hive so they're not so nervous. I'm gonna give a little bit of smoke to calm them down and to drive them down so I don't accidentally squish bees. And now we're gonna move these frames that are mainly honey over because that's where they were on the ends. The honey frames are almost always on the end. And this is the hardest part. I have to kind of push the frames over as tight as I can so that I can fit that last frame in. And sometimes that can be really tricky. But let's see if it will go in nice and easy for us. Not bad at all. Look at that, it went in pretty smooth. My frame grip is a little bit stuck in there. Let's get it out, there we go. And you'll notice there may be a little bit of honey that dripped out. You'll clean that right up. Do you see that glistening? That's honey. But now I want to put the hive back together. And see all these bees along the edges? I want to try to avoid hurting them. So watch what happens when I give them quite a bit of smoke. They are going to scramble and kind of go down so that I don't hurt them. And I want to make sure that there's almost 0 bees along the edges because I'm going to put a box right on top and it's going to go right along those edges. So now that I've done that, I'm going to quickly grab this box and I'm going to put it on just like that. Oops. Make sure it's nice and tight so that the weather and the water can't get in there. And now I need to put the Queen Excluder back on. That was this metal part, remember? The queen can't get through there. but the worker bees can. And then I'm gonna put the medium honey super on, and that is where they're gonna put all that wonderful nectar that is gonna be turned into honey, and that's what we're gonna harvest come the end of summer. I'm gonna tighten up these frames to make sure that they put the honey in properly. And now I need to use the inner cover. Make sure this vent is out towards the front. And then the outer cover. And at Bees in the D, because we have a lot of hives up on rooftops as well, and we're along the river, it gets a little windy. So we have straps to make sure that their roof stays on, the outer cover stays put, and I even put a couple bricks to really make sure that it's not gonna go anywhere. So basically, that's all the parts of the hive, the different casts of bees that are in a hive, all the different things that we looked for, including seeing royalty. How cool was that? So thanks for joining us for our hive tour and a little bit more of an explanation about beekeeping and honeybees. Thanks for joining us.
All right, I am going to stop sharing there, and hopefully I saw my video lag a little bit, and I am going to open it up for questions. Like I said, I wish it could have been live, but I hope you enjoyed seeing all the different things inside of a hive, and hopefully learned a little bit along the way as well. So do we have any questions, Hazel?
There's one. I'm not sure. Does that hurt them? I'm not sure which part of the process they're talking about, but does any part of like what you were doing like injure?
I'm guessing they're wondering about the smoke, if that hurts them, because a lot of people do ask that. And actually, no, the smoke does not hurt them. I want to make sure that I don't give too much. The only area that they could get hurt is if I didn't smoke and they were along the edges or in the way. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of bees, unfortunately, sometimes a couple may get squished. And that's always sad as a beekeeper when that happens. Any other last minute questions that people have? If you do, please put it in the Q&A. It can be about our organization. It could be about bees themselves. And I didn't put up the last slide. I meant to, just so that you guys know, we do have social media. It's just at Bees in the D. And we put in bee facts almost daily. I do Forager Fridays every Friday where I highlight a different plant that is growing here in Michigan. And then a lot of times we'll do other fun live videos in the hives and share a lot of other facts, national days, like I did National Cherry Day, National Pie Day, 3.14, shared a thing about cherries. So please follow us on both Instagram and Facebook, and you can learn a lot more or ask your questions there if you need to.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions.
Oh, good.
How do you make sure the bees are hydrated?
Oh, great question. I love that you know that bees, like all living things, need a lot of water, especially when it's really hot. One of the things that we do when we place our hives is we look at this. We're so lucky to live in this age. I can look at a satellite map and I can see if there's water nearby. Now those hives have the Detroit River like very close. So they have lots of water. So that is one way I really make sure that there's some natural waterways. If there isn't, we actually put out bowls of water, but we put rocks or marbles or things in that bowl of water because we don't want the bees to get in and drown. It allows them to land on something. The only tricky thing about doing that is now you have stagnant water. And so every once in a while, you might want to clean the water because mosquito larvae can get in there, and you don't want to also provide a good home for new mosquitoes. But that's a couple of the things that we do to make sure they stay hydrated. But really in Michigan, we're pretty lucky. We got a lot of water around. So there's usually a stream or a pond or a ditch or something that provides water for the bees. And they actually like dirty water better than they do clean water.
Yeah. We have another question about what happens if the queen bee dies.
Oh, what a great question. Remember those practice cells that you saw in the tour? If the queen bee dies, sometimes it won't be in the practice cell, but the bees instinctively know that their queen is no longer around because she's constantly giving off a smell or a pheromone. And when they no longer sense that, they know, uh-oh, we need a new mom. And so what they do is the nurse bees go right to work knowing what they need to do, and they feed a day-old larva. Actually quite a few of them. They power feed them a special diet that's different than the other bees that are in the larva state, and they actually form a new queen. And about 15 days after they start that, she goes through the whole metamorphosis like the worker bees and the drone bees. She'll go out on a flight. And remember how I said the drone bees try to find a queen from a different hive to mate with? Those drone bees are then going to mate with that queen, and she will fly back, and now she's able to start laying eggs. So they actually make their own queen. Unfortunately, sometimes nature doesn't work, where maybe they don't have any eggs or small larvae. So that's why beekeepers are looking in the hives to make sure that their hive is healthy and has a good queen. If they don't, this is going to sound really silly, I can actually buy a queen. I can go and get a queen from a breeder, and I can introduce that queen in that little cage you saw in the beginning, and eventually they'll accept her pheromone and they can have a whole new queen. Or sometimes I let nature do it a little bit different. That's why I have at least 2 hives at each location. I'll go in a neighboring hive, find a frame that has all kinds of fresh eggs and little baby larvae. I'll shake the bees off and I'll put it into the hive that doesn't have the queen. And now they have a new little larva to make into a queen, and they can do it naturally. So there's a couple different ways that we can do it. Great question.
Yeah. Someone asked, how many hives do you have right now?
So after this summer, this spring, I'm introducing quite a few new locations. We just announced a couple like the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge. We're putting hives there. The Birmingham Country Club, a lot of different places. We will be at about 197 hives across 5 counties in Southeast Michigan. So we're in about 60 different locations, including the one you saw in the video at the Outdoor Adventure Center. So lots of hives and lots of wonderful volunteers, because everybody in our organization, including myself, are volunteers. We do it for free. That's what that means. So we basically do all the work without pay because we're very passionate, and it's very important to us to help our pollinators.
Yeah. We have time for a couple more questions. Someone asked, do bees get lost when they go to collect pollen?
Oh, I love these questions. You guys ask great questions. So bees actually are quite amazing. They can orient themselves to the very location that they live. Kind of like what we use GPS for, but they have it built in. And you'll see the bees when they are brand new come out of the hive and do figure 8s in front of the hive. They are orient themselves to where the sun position is and where their position is. And when they go out to forage, they go anywhere from 3 to 5 mile radius from the hive, and they know exactly that territory and they know exactly where to return. So if I move the hive on them, they're going to come back to the location where the hive was and be very, very confused, because they know that that's where their home should be. Kind of like you, if you were walking home from school one day and all of a sudden your home was gone, you know which direction to go when you know your neighborhood. The bees are kind of the same. They learn where it is. So that's a great question. Unfortunately, there are some diseases. There was colony collapse disorder, which became very newsworthy, where bees, they believe, do get disoriented and they don't know how to go back to their hive, and that hurts the hive. And so they're not sure what caused that. They think it could be a blend of things, the many different diseases and parasites. And unfortunately, we use a lot of pesticides and herbicides on our plants. They think that could have been or is the cause of that.
Yeah, I think we have time for one last question.
Fantastic.
Someone asked, what happens if the queen does not lay enough eggs or all the bees suddenly die?
So if a queen starts tuckering out, by the way, I didn't share this in the video, the queen lives up to 5 years. And after a while, she starts to slow down, or maybe she just is not a very strong queen. This is going to sound a little mean, but they have to help their hive. And so the worker bees, if they know the queen isn't doing a very good job, they'll purposely start to build out a new queen, and then they will sting and kill the original queen so that they can have a new queen that can do a little bit better job. I know it sounds mean, but in the long run, it can save the hive because they need to be strong going into the winter. And if too many bees die out, or there's not enough being emerging because the queen's not laying many, they have to form a winter cluster, and they vibrate their wing muscles and they create friction. If you go like this with your hands, you can feel the heat, and then they keep that cluster about 90 degrees all year round, and the queen is in the middle. And all winter, they keep her warm. If there's not enough bees, they can't make that warmth, and unfortunately, they won't make it through the winter. And then come spring, around end of February, it's a little before spring, the queen starts laying more eggs, just a small patch, but then grows more and more to help repopulate for the summer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who's watching. Be sure to check out sciencefestival.msu.edu for all of our other events happening throughout April, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Hazel, for having us. It's always fun. See you guys.
See ya.